In the labyrinth of modern literature, each line becomes a doorway, not merely to meaning, but to entire civilizations of thought. When I penned, "April is the cruelest month," I was not simply observing seasonal irony, I was invoking Chaucer's Pilgrims, medieval Christian cycles, and the ancient fertility rites that still pulse beneath our concrete consciousness. This is the allusion game, a technique that transforms every verse into a universe, where past and present collapse into a single moment of recognition. You see, allusion is not ornamental learning displayed for academic applause. It is the very method by which tradition speaks to individual talent, creating what I have called the ideal order of literature. Each reference carries within it the accumulated wisdom of centuries, compressed into phrases that resonate across time. When properly employed, allusion becomes the mechanism through which a poem transcends its immediate circumstances to achieve universality. In our fragmented age, where cultural memory grows thin and attention spans shrink, the elusive method offers something radical: depth. It insists that meaning is not self-contained but relational, that understanding emerges through the intersection of texts, cultures, and consciousness. This is how poetry becomes archaeology of the soul, excavating layers of human experience compressed into language. Today, we shall explore how allusion transforms verse into vision, creating poetry that is simultaneously ancient and immediate, personal and universal. The game begins now. Chapter 1: The Architecture of Memory. Memory is not mere recollection, it is the foundation upon which all meaningful art must build. When I construct a poem through allusion, I am creating an architecture where each reference serves as both cornerstone and bridge, connecting the immediate experience of the reader to the vast storehouse of human wisdom. Consider how the opening of "The Waste Land" operates. "April is the cruelest month" immediately invokes Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, where April brings renewal and pilgrimages. But my April breeds lilacs out of dead land, mixing memory and desire. The allusion creates tension, where Chaucer found hope, I discover anguish. This juxtaposition is not contradiction but conversation, a dialogue between medieval faith and modern skepticism. This architectural principle operates throughout my work. In Profrock, when I write, "I have measured out my life with coffee spoons," the allusion reaches toward the domestic rituals that have replaced grand gestures. The coffee spoon becomes symbolic of modern life's trivial precision, its careful measurement of meaninglessness. Yet the very act of measuring echoes biblical and classical traditions of weighing souls, of divine judgment. The genius of elusive architecture lies in its economy. A single phrase can carry the weight of entire traditions. When I reference Dante's Inferno in The Hollow Men, between the idea / and the reality / between the motion / and the act / falls the shadow, I invoke not just Dante's journey but the entire Christian understanding of human fallibility, the gap between aspiration and achievement. But allusion must never become mere display of learning. Each reference must earn its place through emotional necessity. The reader may not catch every allusion, but they will feel the depth, the sense that these words carry more than their surface meaning. This is how tradition lives, not as museum piece but as living force, shaping contemporary expression. The architecture of memory through allusion creates poems that are simultaneously ancient and modern, personal and universal. Each line becomes a room in the vast mansion of human experience, where readers can dwell and discover new chambers of meaning with each return visit. Chapter 2: The Dialogue of Civilizations. True allusion creates what I call a dialogue of civilizations, a conversation across centuries where voices from different eras speak to our present moment. This is not simply quotation or reference, it is the method by which poetry becomes a meeting ground for the accumulated wisdom of humanity. When I write in The Waste Land, I will show you fear in a handful of dust, I am invoking the biblical tradition, for dust thou art, And unto dust shalt thou return, while simultaneously engaging with the Buddhist understanding of impermanence and the ecological consciousness emerging in our industrial age. 3 traditions converge in 7 words, creating meaning that transcends any single cultural framework. This dialogical method requires what I have termed intellectual honesty. The poet cannot simply appropriate fragments from other traditions for decorative purposes. Each allusion must be earned through genuine understanding and spiritual necessity. When I reference the Upanishads in The Waste Land, Shanti Shanti Shanti, it emerges from years of study and meditation on Eastern philosophy, not from exotic ornamentation. The dialogue becomes most powerful when traditions that seem opposed discover unexpected harmony. In For Quartets, I weave together Christian mysticism with Greek philosophy, Buddhist meditation with Anglican liturgy. These are not contradictions but different approaches to the same essential human experiences: time, eternity, suffering, transcendence. Consider how this works in practice. When I write, "In my beginning is my end," I am drawing simultaneously from medieval Christian thought, Greek cyclical philosophy, and contemporary physics. The line becomes a meeting point where different ways of understanding time converge, creating meaning that none could achieve alone. The American reader brings unique advantages to this dialogue. Your culture's openness to diverse traditions, its experimental spirit, its democratic ideal that wisdom can emerge from any source, these qualities make American consciousness particularly receptive to elusive poetry. You are already living in a dialogue of civilizations. But the dialogue requires active participation. The reader must bring their own knowledge, their own cultural memory, to complete the conversation. This is why elusive poetry rewards study and rereading. Each encounter reveals new connections, new possibilities for meaning. Through this method, poetry becomes not just expression but exploration, a means of discovering how human wisdom accumulates and evolves across time and culture. Chapter 3: The Compression of Eternity. In Allusion, we discover the miraculous capacity of language to compress eternity into moments, to contain entire philosophical systems within single phrases. This compression is not reduction but intensification, the way a seed contains the potential of the full-grown tree. When I write, not with a bang but a whimper, I am compressing observations about political decline, cultural exhaustion, and spiritual emptiness into a single rhythmic phrase. The allusion reaches backward to apocalyptic literature while pointing forward to the quiet desperation of modern existence. The line contains multitudes while remaining perfectly accessible. This compression operates through what I call emotional mathematics, the precise calculation of effect through accumulated associations. Each allusion carries its own emotional charge, and when combined skillfully, these charges create new possibilities for meaning. The poet becomes an architect of feeling, building complex emotional structures through carefully chosen references. Consider the opening of Journey of the Magi, a cold coming we had of it. The apparent simplicity conceals extraordinary compression. I am drawing from Lancelot Andrews's Christmas sermon, biblical narrative, and contemporary travel writing simultaneously. The 3 traditions converge to create a voice that is ancient yet immediate, faithful yet questioning. The compression principle requires absolute economy. Every word must carry maximum weight. This is why elusive poetry often appears deceptively simple on the surface. The complexity lies not in ornate language but in the density of reference and association. Like geological strata, each reading reveals new layers of meaning. For the American reader, this compression offers particular relevance. In your fast-paced culture, where time itself seems compressed, elusive poetry provides a method for achieving depth without length, significance without verbosity. A single line can contain more wisdom than volumes of explanation. But compression demands patience from both poet and reader. The poet must master traditions before condensing them, the reader must approach the text with meditative attention. This is not passive consumption but active collaboration in the creation of meaning. The miracle occurs when compression achieves expansion, when the concentrated phrase suddenly opens into vast landscapes of understanding. This is how poetry transcends its physical limitations to become infinite in possibility. Through compression, allusion transforms reading from linear progression to spatial exploration, where meaning accumulates not just through sequence but through depth, resonance, and the mysterious chemistry of association. Chapter 4: The Music of Recognition. Allusion creates what I call the music of recognition, that moment when the reader's consciousness suddenly expands as familiar phrases reveal new contexts and meanings. This recognition is not merely intellectual but musical, creating harmonics and resonances that operate below the threshold of conscious analysis. When I write these fragments I have shored against my ruins, the music begins with the biblical phrase, shore up, continues through the architectural metaphor of fragments as building materials, and culminates in the personal image of ruins. But the real music occurs when readers recognize how their own experience of cultural fragmentation mirrors the speaker's condition. Recognition becomes revelation. This musical principle explains why allusion works even when readers cannot identify specific references. The phrases carry their own internal music, rhythms, cadences, and emotional colorings that communicate independent of conscious knowledge. When I echo biblical language or classical meters, sensitive readers feel the weight and authority even without scholarly identification. The music operates through layers of recognition. First comes the immediate impact of the language itself, its sound, rhythm, and emotional tone. Then comes recognition of the specific reference, if the reader possesses that knowledge. Finally comes the deeper recognition of how past and present illuminate each other through the elusive connection. Consider how this works in The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. When I write, I have heard the mermaids singing, each to each. I am invoking the entire tradition of sirens, from Homer's Odyssey through medieval and Renaissance poetry. But the music culminates in the recognition that modern life has rendered us incapable of responding to beauty's call. I do not think that they will sing to me. The musical quality of allusion explains its emotional power. Just as a melody can evoke complex feelings without explicit statement, allusive poetry creates emotional recognition through the accumulated associations of language. Each reference adds its own harmonic to the overall composition. For contemporary American readers, this music offers particular rewards. Your literary tradition, from Whitman through the present, has always been intensely allusive, drawing from multiple sources to create new harmonies. You possess the cultural preparation to hear these complex musical arrangements. The music of recognition requires what I call educated intuition, the capacity to respond to patterns and connections even when conscious knowledge is incomplete. This intuition develops through reading, through attention to language, through willingness to let poems work on consciousness gradually. When recognition occurs, it creates what can only be described as musical pleasure, the satisfaction of hearing how different traditions harmonize, how past voices join with present experience to create new possibilities for understanding. Chapter 5: The Democracy of Meaning. One of allusion's most remarkable qualities is its democratic character, how it creates meaning that operates simultaneously at multiple levels, accessible to readers with different degrees of preparation while rewarding deeper study. This is not elitism but its opposite, the creation of poetry that grows with the reader's growth. When I write, "Do I dare to eat a peach?" the line works immediately as an expression of middle-aged timidity and social anxiety. Any reader can grasp Prufrock's paralysis before this simple decision. But for readers familiar with biblical symbolism, classical mythology, and literary tradition, the peach carries additional resonances: forbidden fruit, sensual pleasure, the courage required for authentic living. This multilevel accessibility represents democracy in action. The poem does not exclude readers lacking extensive literary education, but it rewards those who bring such education to their reading. This is how poetry can serve both general human needs and specialized intellectual interests without compromise. The democratic principle operates through what I call expanding circles of meaning. At the center lies the immediate human experience: love, death, time, loss, hope. The allusions extend outward in concentric circles, each adding depth and context while the central experience remains accessible to all sincere readers. Consider how The Waste Land functions democratically. A reader can experience the poem's emotional power, its portrayal of modern spiritual drought, without catching every reference to Dante, Wagner, or the Upanishads. Yet each recognized allusion deepens understanding and enriches the experience. This democratic accessibility explains allusion's enduring relevance in American culture. Your democratic ideals demand art that speaks to common human experience while respecting intellectual achievement. Allusive poetry provides exactly this combination, populist in its emotional accessibility, elitist only in its rewards for learning. The democracy extends to cultural sources as well. In my mature work, I draw equally from high and popular culture, from Christian liturgy and music hall songs, from Sanskrit texts and contemporary newspapers. This cultural democracy reflects the modern condition where all traditions become simultaneously available. But democracy requires responsibility from both poet and reader. The poet must ensure that allusions serve authentic emotional and spiritual purposes, not mere display. The reader must approach the text with openness and patience, willing to grow into fuller understanding. The result is poetry that functions as what I call cultural commons, shared space where different levels of education and experience can encounter each other productively. This is how literature serves democracy, not by reducing complexity but by making complexity accessible and rewarding. Through democratic allusion, poetry becomes a meeting ground where personal experience encounters universal tradition, where individual reading intersects with collective memory, creating meaning that belongs fully to neither but emerges from their interaction. Chapter 6: The Resurrection of Language. Through allusion, language itself undergoes resurrection. Dead phrases recover vitality, worn expressions regain their original power, and contemporary speech connects with its deepest sources. This resurrection is not nostalgic but transformative, breathing new life into both ancient wisdom and modern expression. When I employ biblical language in secular contexts, I am not merely decorating contemporary speech with religious authority. I am demonstrating how the profound rhythms and images that shaped Western consciousness remain available for new purposes. In the beginning was the Word becomes not just theological doctrine but recognition of language's creative power in all contexts. This resurrection operates through the principle of renewed recognition. Phrases that have become cliched through overuse suddenly recover their original force when placed in new contexts. When I write "Fear Death by Water," I am reviving the ancient maritime anxieties that shaped human consciousness for millennia, making them immediate for readers who live primarily on land. The process requires extraordinary precision. The poet must understand both the original context and contemporary needs well enough to create meaningful bridges between them. This is not translation but transformation. The original meaning provides foundation for new significance. Consider how Shakespeare's language undergoes resurrection in modern allusive poetry. When I echo, "Those are pearls that were his eyes," I am not simply quoting but demonstrating how Shakespearean insight into transformation through death illuminates contemporary experience of loss and change. The original line gains new life while enriching present understanding. This resurrection extends beyond individual phrases to entire linguistic traditions. Through allusion, the accumulated wisdom of human language becomes available for contemporary use. Biblical parallelism. classical rhetoric, medieval allegory, all these modes of expression can contribute to modern poetry when skillfully employed. For American writers and readers, this resurrection offers particular opportunities. Your language has always been democratic, drawing from multiple sources without apology. Through allusive technique, you can claim inheritance of all human linguistic achievement while maintaining distinctly American voice and concerns. The resurrection process demands respect for both source and new context. The poet cannot simply raid other traditions for useful materials but must understand how borrowed language can serve authentic contemporary purposes. This requires both scholarly preparation and genuine spiritual need. When resurrection succeeds, it creates what I call living tradition, the demonstration that past wisdom remains vital for present circumstances. This is how culture maintains continuity while enabling change, how individual talent engages with tradition to create new possibilities. The ultimate goal is not preservation but transformation, the creation of language that carries forward the best of human expression while addressing the needs of contemporary consciousness. Through elusive resurrection, poetry becomes the means by which tradition lives and grows rather than merely surviving as museum piece. Chapter 7: The Future of Elusive Art. As we advance into an era where digital technology reshapes human consciousness and global communication creates new possibilities for cultural intersection, the elusive method faces both unprecedented challenges and extraordinary opportunities. The future of this art depends on our capacity to adapt ancient wisdom to new conditions while preserving its essential functions. The digital age presents apparent threats to elusive poetry. When information becomes instantly accessible, the specialized knowledge that illusion rewards might seem less valuable. When attention spans shrink and reading becomes increasingly fragmented, the patience that elusive depth requires might appear obsolete. Yet these same technological changes create new possibilities. Never before have readers possessed such immediate access to the sources of elusive reference. A student reading The Waste Land can instantly research Dante, Wagner, or the Upanishads. The barriers that once limited elusive poetry to highly educated audiences are rapidly dissolving. More significantly, our global interconnectedness creates unprecedented opportunities for what I call planetary illusion, the weaving together of wisdom traditions from all cultures in ways that respect their integrity while creating new synthetic possibilities. The American poet of the future might draw equally from African oral traditions, Asian philosophy, European literature, and indigenous American wisdom. This expansion requires new forms of cultural sensitivity and intellectual responsibility. The poet cannot simply appropriate from any tradition that seems useful but must develop genuine understanding and respect for different cultural contexts. This democratization of elusive possibility demands higher, not lower, ethical standards. The American literary tradition provides excellent preparation for this future. Your culture's experimental openness, its democratic ideals, its tradition of cultural synthesis, all these qualities position American poets to lead in developing new forms of elusive art that can speak to global audiences while maintaining local authenticity. The key lies in understanding that illusion's essential function remains constant across technological and cultural changes. Whether drawing from Virgil or contemporary social media, from Buddhist sutras or popular music, the poet seeks to create meaning through the intersection of traditions, to demonstrate how different forms of wisdom illuminate each other. Future elusive art must master what I call inclusive depth, the capacity to draw from multiple traditions while remaining accessible to readers from different cultural backgrounds. This requires not simplification but skillful orchestration of complexity. The ultimate promise lies in poetry's capacity to serve as meeting ground for human consciousness in all its diversity. Through sophisticated elusive technique, poetry can become the means by which global culture discovers its underlying unity while celebrating its magnificent variety. This future demands poets who are simultaneously scholars and artists, cultural ambassadors and individual voices, traditionalists and innovators. It requires readers willing to grow into fuller understanding, to approach poetry as exploration rather than mere consumption. Conclusion. The Allusion Game, as we have seen, is not merely literary technique but a method for creating meaning in an age of fragmentation. Through the skillful weaving of past and present, tradition and innovation, individual experience and collective wisdom, poetry becomes the means by which human consciousness achieves both depth and unity. Each line becomes a universe not through ornamental display but through authentic necessity, the recognition that meaning emerges through relationship, that understanding develops through the intersection of traditions, that wisdom accumulates through the patient work of connecting what seems separate. For you, the American reader, this tradition offers both inheritance and responsibility. You inherit the accumulated wisdom of human expression in all its forms. You bear responsibility for carrying that wisdom forward in ways that serve contemporary needs while honoring ancient sources. The elusive method teaches us that isolation is illusion. Every meaningful utterance draws upon the vast storehouse of human expression. Every authentic poem becomes part of that continuing tradition. Through allusion, we discover that originality emerges not from rejecting the past but from engaging it so deeply that new possibilities become visible. As you encounter elusive poetry, remember that recognition is a form of collaboration. Your growing knowledge, your expanding awareness, your willingness to let poems work upon consciousness over time, these become part of the creative process itself. The game continues in every reading, in every moment when past wisdom illuminates present experience, in every discovery that individual lines can indeed contain entire universes of meaning. This is how poetry serves life, by demonstrating that depth is always available to those willing to seek it, that meaning multiplies through attention, that the fragments of human experience can indeed be assembled into significance. May your own engagement with this tradition become part of its ongoing creation, adding your voice to the eternal conversation.